All right. Hello. I'm the dramatic historian, and we are finally having our history happy hour with the unfiltered historian, and of course, Daz from UK and Civil War history. Um, but okay, well, I think there's really no topic of discussion. But
What?
of course, the hot button topic, though, is of course Ken Burns and the American Revolution. Um, So, just in your opinion and your guys' opinion, just overall impressions of the series so far. Well, I guess it did finish up. So,
Well, I'll tell you what, because America won, I'll let Tyler go first. How about that?
You're gonna make me go first. So I need to start off with an admission that I have actually not finished the last two episodes yet.
I haven't finished the last episode,
Yeah, I need to admit that
Halfway
before I
through.
go too far into
so I
this.
apologise for that.
actually, you know what? Since we're all on the honesty train here, last two. I still need to finish the last two.
But what I've seen, is good.
I was gonna watch it Thursday and Friday as I was going on, but Friday got extremely hectic, so of course I couldn't catch up with even Thursdays that I missed. Thursday, sometimes as a historian, we like to take little breaks. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And I unfortunately fell into the Battlefield 6 trap on a PlayStation, so I missed it on Thursday. Could have definitely made it, but I didn't. But on that topic, what I think preliminarily when I watching and also having the opportunity to go and see a little advanced screening, we got some advanced clips at Mount Vernon, which was an insanely powerful place to even see some of the footage of what we later have seen in these full-scale documentaries. I see the differences and why people might also complain that it's not the Civil War, and I get that it's not the Civil War, and it's not going to be. That was something that was special, still to this day is special. But the Revolutionary War, I think, isn't necessarily written or made for us. And that's something I've argued with one of my historian friends on Facebook there. And I wouldn't even say argue, but he was like, I'm seeing this isn't as, in depth, or I'm not learning much new. I'm like, well, I don't think Ken Burns wrote this for you. And that's kind of the mindset I have going into watching this myself, is that this isn't something that, I don't have an extensive knowledge on the Rev War, but enough to be dangerous, I guess. I don't know, maybe if that's the correct terminology, but enough to be dangerous. Yeah. And to see the level that has been released is still something I'm learning from, but a lot of people that may have never have approached the American Revolutionary War in depth are going to learn an immense a lot. So I think this is awesome. This is a way for everybody to be able to hear the story of the American Revolution, not just ones that have known it, and also bringing in a new crowd. That's my initial takeaway so far, is that it's really not made for the academic historian. This is something that's made for everybody as a whole, and I like that idea. And I think Ken Burns is probably the best person to make a film that is for everybody to see. But those are just my initial thoughts already. I mean, I can go further because I've been some inspired reading.
We will here in just a minute.
Yeah.
Darren, how about you?
Yeah, so some great points, really great points. I don't think the Civil War was made for us either. I think that was made for that general audience. But again, I know very little about the Rev War because I wasn't interested in it for obvious reasons. Joking aside, this wasn't interested in it. There's other stuff that I'm interested in. But what it has done for me is it's reeled me in wanting to know more, because it is interesting. Yeah, I know the build up to it and I know the end, but the battles and stuff like that I have no clue about at all. And what I love about it is very well put together. The way Ken Burns does, it's got a very similar feel to the way Civil War is. I would say a couple of criticisms would be the music is not as good. I think there was a little bit more thought about the music for the Civil War side of things, but then maybe there was more music they could use. You haven't got sort of like a character like Shelby Foote in there. Just stuff like that, but it is very, very good. But also, again, just like things like the movie Gettysburg and Civil War, it draws people that are maybe not necessarily interested in that part of history into something. And hopefully for people like us that really love our history, the hope is that they will then go and pick up a book and want to know more about it. And that's the goal, isn't it? That's our main goal. So
Yeah.
overall, again, I haven't watched it. I've watched pretty much most of it. I've really enjoyed it. What's really good about it is a little bit, I think there was a point. I went on the Rev War guys page the other night and had a chat about this. And they're a bit more truthful about the nastiness of war in this series, whereas the Civil War is a bit more sort of glorified in a way. Glorified in a sort of romanticism way, whereas I feel this one, they there's a lot of references to the violence that goes on during this period, and not just on the battlefield, within the streets, within the towns, with Native Americans, with enslaved people, and it's quite good. I think it's a very good TV show.
I think it's a needed touch, honestly, because when you think about the Revolutionary War, that's not something that actually comes to mind as like the tense violence that the war does. I mean, any war is violent, but there was some.
This is really intense.
Yeah, there is.
Thought, you know.
Well,
Yeah, 100%.
I think, Darren, you have a really kind of unique perspective here, especially being that obviously you being British. But I don't know how much if this surprised you at all, but I think the one thing that's really been sticking out to me is when they're talking about just kind of like the social history that comes with the American Revolution, the violence that actually existed between your patriots and your loyalists. I was shocked by the level of violence that the patriots inflicted on loyalists.
Well, I think both sides. I think they're both as violent as each other. Go through it.
That was surprising to me.
Not to throw a book plug your way, but if you haven't ever read it, Our First Civil War by H.W. Brands touches on that, and I think that's actually the whole premise of the book. It's phenomenal. So,
and I'm just going to correct you. It's loyalists versus rebels, awesome. not patriots. Sorry, it's rebels.
Clarify that and get that out early, right there.
Now they mention that word quite a lot, but my other criticism would be is they start a story and then it stops, and you think they're going to carry it on. And they go on something else.
I've noticed
that many times. So they do it.
Yeah.
So there's the one when they're up in New York State and they're saying about Ticonderoga and Canada, and they're going to invade up this lake, and then all of a sudden goes on something else. And like, hang on, you ain't finished that story yet. I want to know what happens. Can you finish it, please? So that's a criticism I have.
It's like they dangle a carrot.
Yeah.
It's like, there you go, but you never get the carrot.
The next one.
Well, I'm kind of curious. I mean, you kind of brought up a book, and actually this was a question for later that I had, but I'm kind of, since you brought it up, I'm going to ask it.
Sure.
So, okay, when we're talking about books and the American Revolution, what are some of the names that really like pop out for you, whether it's just even like a general history or like a bio or something like that?
The most obvious, I would think, and the most probably approachable is Rick Atkinson. I haven't heard anything wrong about it, and I have read his first volume, and I've really enjoyed that one. I've not completed the second, but I have the second, so I've gotten up to Brandywine. But of course, I get obsessed with that whole Philadelphia campaign of '77. So I've got a trilogy of military histories for that whole Philadelphia campaign that I'd like to tackle before I go back to an overall. Just because that was the one like real interest I found from Rick Atkinson's second volume so far.
Okay.
I think I would like to think, because again, his third volume isn't even out yet, but that's probably going to be one of the most approachable.
Yeah.
Bios. One I'm reading now, actually, I have it handy. I'll just pull that out and show everybody. I do. It's kind of blurry, but it's called General George Washington by Ed Langle, and it's a military life of Washington. So it's a strict military history of George Washington from the French and Indian War all the way till obviously post-American Revolution. But
I forgot to tell you guys, this is actually just about me and just getting new names for books I need to go get.
There's a good one. I've had it on the shelf forever, and watching this documentary, that's actually what has really interested me. There was another one about Lord Dunmore that I can get into in a little bit, but since we're on this topic, that was the book that I really decided, you know what, I'm going to take it off the shelf and I'm going to read it. I want to understand Washington's generalship more than I do. I don't have a general grasp. I've always been taught that he was just some, great commander, and really I'm learning that maybe he just had qualities, all the qualities that the Continental Army needed in a commander to lead the army, and that's kind of the takeaway I'm getting from it. He may not be this most the most successful commander that we have always thought he was. And
I-
Ed Langle is honest.
Sorry.
He is probably the most well versed with Washington's papers and had the most time with them. So you're getting a really good, honest account from Langle.
I think that's what the TV show does really well, is that it doesn't paint him as this massive hero,
Yeah.
which he is, let's be honest.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
They do
It's
make
Washington.
it very clear that he's not very great tactically. And he makes a lot of mistakes, and also in that
He does.
when you'll find out when you watch the second to last episode, there's a period where he disappears because there's a little bit of infighting between certain people, and they
Attempts on his life.
don't
even
agree.
the threats
They don't
to
agree
himself.
with him, and he doesn't agree with them.
Yeah.
And so it's great that they've done that actually and made it, because again, he's been put up on this massive pedestal, and he deserves to be. But at the same time, at least they're telling the truth, and they're not, buttering over it, and like some TV shows might have done in the past. I just think
Shattering
they've
the
done that
Marvel
really
Universe.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys took this away at all, but I've noticed, they've kind of been pointing in direction in terms of like ability on the battlefield.
Hmm.
It seems like they keep pointing to this character that keeps kind of popping up, Nathaniel Green. And it seems like even going all the way back to the Battle of Long Island, right? They're like, oh, well, Green gets sick and is replaced by Israel Putnam. And it's like, Putnam obviously doesn't have the same eye for terrain that Nathaniel Green does. And so I don't know. It's kind of, I'm preparing to hear more about him later, but it kind of seems like he is playing a bigger role than, I think past history have probably given him credit for, at least shows.
Absolutely.
I could be wrong on that. I am not.
No, I think you're onto something. And a lot of the folks that would study the Southern campaigns of the American Revolutionary War would be sitting here applauding you for that shout out right there. Green does play a larger role in the American Revolution than we would actually think at first thought, because of course the Northern campaigns get overshadowed, or the Southern campaigns get overshadowed by Washington's movements around Morristown, and then eventually to it just continues to be on Washington. But when Green goes south, that's a huge, I can't remember the exact battle. I think, is it Cowpens that Green is at? Or a part, I believe so.
He was a supporting role for Cowpens, but I thought his big name to his battle was Guilford Courthouse.
I'm conflating the two. That's probably exactly it. Yeah, my knowledge in the Southern campaigns is very, very little. I don't actually have a working. Yeah, it's a new thing. This documentary again is spurting that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be more discussions because I'm definitely into it.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Good.
Seriously, it's very, very interesting.
Well, sorry to again change
No, it's
subject
okay.
here so quickly, but
It's a happy hour. That's what we're here for.
yeah, I know that's right.
Be
Well,
all
one
over
thing
the place.
that this kind of bothered me just a little bit when it came to the documentary, and look, I love the fact that they really honed in on the New England colonies when they're talking about, the causes of the revolution. I mean, you can't not talk about Boston. You can't not talk about Philadelphia. But what about what's going on south? I mean, what else is going on? What about the middle colonies? What about the southern colonies?
Yeah, they didn't really talk about that, did they? Not
Yeah,
really.
Virginia does. Yeah, Virginia. Just to heck with that. To heck with that state.
But again, at the
Nothing
same
big
time, though,
happens
you've got to
here.
remember
No.
at the time, those southern colonies were very, very rich, extremely rich,
Yeah.
And so, maybe I don't know why they didn't mention them so much, but they, and again, you remember it's all fractured. They didn't really want to work together. They hated working together. These 13 colonies, they were all in it for themselves.
Yeah, that was one thing I've noticed as well, that it's amazing that we were even able to unite the colonies from.
Well, they mention it in the documentary. They say when George Washington comes up to the New Jersey or wherever he goes up to, and he meets these troops from Boston and Philadelphia. They're like, who's this guy? Who's this Virginian telling us what to do?
Yeah.
Because again, even at that point in this early part of American history, there's them between the North and the South. There's that difference between the way that they, you know, carry on their lives. You know, it's all different, the way that they do everything, and that will come back to haunt you guys in the Civil War. You know, it doesn't go away, not really.
Yeah.
It's even in the Continental Congress when they're actually trying to create the Constitution. You know, we're getting ready the Articles of Confederation, incoming Constitution. There's still like the states are sort of not in agreement with each other to create this one binding document that binds everybody together. So I mean, it continues. Like it's not just something I think we see only in the Civil War. I think, and you made a good point that we definitely see it again in the American Civil War. It happens again.
And again, going back to that, you know, because it was, you know, people forget that it's sort of like a civil war in a way.
It is. No, for
Lloyd,
sure.
It is a civil war.
They are mentioning that.
Yeah. And I've seen that thrown around more. Like even before that's when I mentioned the Brands book earlier to you. I got that probably in 2020. I think I could be wrong, but it was somewhere around that time. You know, pre-COVID seems like a million years ago. But there's already been kind of that flotation of that this was a civil war, and it makes all sense. I mean, the loyalists pitched against the colonists and the different factions of the natives, like we were talking about. Like there's definitely that element of a civil war.
And of course, you know, there's that aspect of it of wanting to go west, and Britain are saying, no, we don't want you going west because we've got agreements with, you know, the Native Americans and this, that, and the other, and there's all that as well. But at the same time, all the people that, you know, are fighting are Americans, technically, you know, even loyalists.
Yeah.
I'd love to know the percentage between loyalists and patriots. It's something that's been going through my mind, and you know, might need to Google it. Probably I still haven't Googled it, but since I started watching the program, it was just fascinated me that how many people. And again, loyalists, as you know, got treated badly. But I imagine if you're down in the South, because I've got this notion that in the South, especially places like Georgia and Carolinas, they're very pro-loyalist. That's the feeling I get, because I don't know. I just felt, I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't know, but
I could maybe attempt to stab at this. I could be so far off. I have no idea.
Dude, we're all a long shot. This is great.
The long time ago, I read this book in grad school about loyalists in Arcadia. And I guess in the documentary doesn't really touch on this, but the United States, they didn't just want, you know, Quebec to be this, you know, 14th colony. It was also Arcadia, and they thought they would actually have mutual feelings. But no, the people there were extremely loyalist. I mean, they thought this whole thing was weird that was going on in Boston. As far as South Carolina is concerned, I always like to refer to South Carolina as like colonial South Carolina is like the Russia of the United States. And I say that carefully because it was crazy. They had a social structure there that did not exist anywhere else in the Americas. So basically they had like these vigilante groups that if you weren't being a good husband, for instance, like let's say you're a drunk and you are beating your wife, you're not going to work, they'll show up and just make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. They'll like just hang out. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, they'll actually tie you up to whip you. I mean, they did horrible things to you. But likewise could actually be said of the wife as well. If the wife is not being a good wife, they will do the exact same thing.
Wow.
And so these crazy like acts of violence take place. And this has nothing to do if you're loyal to the crown or not. This just has everything to do with what structure do you, or what social group do you fall under in this given community? I mean, it's weird. It's crazy.
I think you've got to probably point yourself at the religion there, especially within the South, because I think when you look at when the US is colonizing them early days, that those southern states are very religious in the way that they, you know, run their town or their village or their settlement or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's probably got a part to play in it as well, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia was definitely like James Madison, even post-Revolutionary War, is arguing about different aspects of religion. So it's definitely, I mean, you have the statute for religious freedom here, and even Fredericksburg, Virginia, for God's sakes. I see the tie-in with religion in the South for sure. It seems to be more of a.
I think it's more prevalent in the South maybe than the North, but I could be wrong.
I mean, Plymouth was sort of, but that, again, this is 100 years before.
Yeah, that's before. Yeah, so
yeah.
it's yeah.
Darren, do you think that they're portraying British commanders, soldiers? Do you think they're portraying them fairly?
Yeah, I think everything's fair. Yeah, I think they're portraying everyone quite fairly, personally.
Yeah.
And again, I don't really know much about a lot of these commanders, but it's made me want to know more about them. Historically. But yeah, no, I mean, today, I mean, I'm on obviously the last episode, and it talks about the guy that goes onto the British side. Can't remember his name now.
Benedict Arnold. We know who
Benedict Arnold. Yeah,
Mhm.
he marries he falls in love with a loyalist woman.
Yes.
They're saying about him, basically gives up the fort, don't he, in up north somewhere, and like
West Point.
West Point. It really upsets Washington, of course.
Yeah, I think so.
They're back big time. But,
Yeah.
But again, this is the stories that are coming out of this are just so fascinating to me. I want to know more. I will say this though, and I pointed this out the other day as well. From my perspective, and me and Tyler have always joked about this.
Oh, yeah.
This third priority on Britain's list and all that kind of crap. Yeah, right. But the minute Britain leaves, or the British forces get hemmed in Boston. Is it Boston, and then they leave? There's no chance you're ever getting those colonies back. Regardless what you do, you could chuck men at it, you could chuck armies, you could chuck navies at this. But the fact of the matter is, the fighting's going on between the people. So even if you did get a foothold, back in America at the time, those 13 colonies, I think the chances of taking it back was very slim, because you just have guerrilla warfare. Especially in the northern, like I think if you was going to take something back, it would be something like Georgia, say for instance, and maybe Britain would have enough power and enough money to hold a state. I don't think that you would ever be able to bring those 13 colonies ever back to heel, because there would be guerrilla warfare like you've never seen, and it would literally, like they were doing anyway, families killing each other.
Yeah.
Well, I think what sucks for Great Britain was that there were opportunities to really calm the tensions. I think there were, and they recognized some of those, right?
Yeah, they tried to do stuff, don't they, to stop this escalating?
Yeah, because they some of the people did sympathize with the colonists, and they were like, "Yeah, no, that's not right."
And again, this is all my knowledge has come from watching this documentary, and I had to binge watch it because I couldn't watch it the way you guys did, because it's not available in the UK yet. So
you got a VPN or something?
I had to do a VPN and watch it on their website, but it worked, Anyway,
Darren's in Georgia watching this.
So really, when you start getting to the back end of the war, it's George III that's really pushing this, and it's because it's part of his empire. Like the people in Parliament, they're going, this is an endless pit. You're just going to keep chucking money at it. It's not going to fix anything. You can chuck everything at this. It's not going to, but it's him that pushes it.
He's trying to save face, or like his.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of his empire. It's part of, that's what empire is, isn't it? And he's trying to push his agenda of, no, we can't give this up. Because I think if it had been down to the politicians, the war would have ended a lot sooner. I think and again, I didn't know how heavily involved he was, but and he didn't have the power, obviously, that previous kings and monarchs had, because of our own English Civil War, but
yeah, it is. I just think there was a lot of people that really kind of messed this up or made the situation way worse than it needed to be. I think, like I said, I just think there were so many opportunities. I think what's crazy is even in 1775, you have people still toasting. You have these rebels that are toasting King George III in 1775 because they still think that they can get what they want from Great Britain, and have this reunification. But once you have those larger battles take place, I mean, all bets are off. I mean, people have been killed at this point. You can't really go back.
And I want to go back to George Washington and saying, like, obviously they do mention that he's not the best tactically, but what he does is he keeps that army together. That's the most important thing. As you know, in the American Civil War, what keeps the Civil War going? It's Robert E. Lee. It's that army of Northern Virginia. And yes, there are other armies and there are other theaters, but that is the one that they need to defeat. Because if you don't defeat that one, you're not defeating the rest of it. And so that's what they do so well, like George Washington keeps their army together that whole time. And I think even still, like I said earlier, if Britain still defeats George Washington's army, I still don't believe it would have been that easy to just waltz in and take everything back. Right. It wouldn't have happened.
What do you think the U.S. would have looked like if Great Britain won?
I don't know. It's a tough one.
That is.
I think it's still been fractured. I think it would have been different states.
Do you think it would have been you don't think it would have been?
I don't think it would be united, especially not in the North, because the Northern sentiment was very anti-British. And again, I think you would have that, and I think that's where the American Civil War comes in later on. It's that split, It's happened then. That's what's made me look at this differently. Looking at this documentary has made me think you can see the cracks already there with the way that they're killing each other. Loyalists, brother and sister, whatever, so brother against brother, sister, all that stuff. But like you can see it already happening there.
There's one thing that I found interesting too. These guys are actually just really kind of fascinating. It's Dunmore in Virginia in 1775. I don't know, Darren, if you're familiar with Lord Dunmore, but he is the royal governor of Virginia. Okay. I think he's Scottish by birth and has some ties in with Culloden. So like, dude's pretty reputable. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. He's not a nobody, but you want to talk about somebody being extremely incensed over the colonists' actions. He definitely takes this to a level to find a way to really get back at the colonists and enlists slaves. So the enslaved community. He says, hey, if you come fight for the British, you will be given freedom. So enslaved, you're seeing this before Lincoln's even born. You're seeing this before Ben Butler's at Fortress Monroe, conveniently in the same area per se, like Hampton Roads area. This is where all this is going to end up taking place. But there's even a battle called the Battle of Great Bridge that involves some of the colonists and their former enslaved members. Eventually, Lord Dunmore is driven out of the state of Virginia onto this floating fortresses of ships in Hampton Roads area out in the Chesapeake, and will later have to flee to Canada. Like I don't know if it's Quebec exactly, but I do believe most of the enslaved that were promised freedom end up in Canada too. But that's just something I had zero idea of until this documentary came on. I was like, holy crap! Like I always knew there was some gunpowder issue at Williamsburg. And Dunmore just left, but I didn't realize the trail that he brought with him and what that does to Virginia, not just then, but what kind of precedent that sets all the way up to the Civil War, because that is one of the things that Virginians look at when they talk about the argument of slavery, and especially as that gets into the secession era. I think this is something that is a very pivotal role for the state of Virginia itself. It's not just for the American Revolution, but for the state's history. Was that
what a tough position to be put in?
Seriously.
And the thing is, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think it's amazing to me how split the armies are when it comes to recruiting African Americans or enslaved people. And I mean, what I imagine, and again, we've mentioned this already, but it goes to show kind of like it reflects later, like the American Civil War and like how that breaks out. But I imagine the Continental Army and the New England colonies is being made up of largely more African American soldiers. I mean, even Rhode Island and Connecticut promised freedom to enslaved people that signed up. But I imagine like Southern armies are not that way.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I read a lot. Okay, so I'm really juggling two books. There is a book on the Dunmore raid that just came out this year, in Virginia. So that one, I see you got your pen in hand. That's called A Perfect Frenzy, and that's by Andrew Lawler. But that focuses on the enlistment and that kind of reaction to Virginia. But he refers to Abraham Lincoln a lot, which I thought is really cool. And the alluding of like, this is sort of way before Lincoln ever thought about the militarization of Black troops in the American Civil War and what that can do for not only morale, but just for the war effort as a whole. Dunmore realizes that really early on that he has something in his pocket to really aggravate these. So it shows the reliance on slavery and how important that was for the state. But there's even before this, with the sugar plantations in Jamaica and the Caribbean stuff, there are so many slave insurrections that are happening that colonists in Virginia and the southern states that are, these plantations are pretty much in that area, in the deeper south, the tea and sugar plantations, all especially in South Carolina. But Virginia's got its fair share of tobacco and corn and other type of share crops or cash crops. Excuse me. Yeah, they're scared of arming enslaved because they don't want an insurrection either. They're hearing the horror stories, and now Dunmore is giving them weapons. So there's probably a very large reluctance on arming enslaved or African Americans in the South versus the North, because I feel like there are, to my recollection, there are some African Americans that actually fight at like Bunker Hill and Breeds Hill.
Oh yeah, that's right. They mentioned that. Yeah,
and they make the point as well that when Washington first goes up north and joins the Continental Army, that he's, there is I think a regiment of colored troops, and he's not very keen on it because again, this is a guy that has a huge plantation himself, and like you said, Tyler, they're worried. You put a gun in enslaved person's hand, this is going to come back to haunt us.
Absolutely.
And so just want to say to people listening to this, you've got to remember you're looking at this from a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's the way they fought then. That's the way they thought about it, and even right up to the Civil War and after the Civil War is the same thinking.
It shows you how long that's been in the thread of American history. I mean, that same sort of argument is being thrown around in 1775 and even before.
And so, I mean, I don't mean to break away from I know we do keep mentioning the Civil War, but I've been doing some research on Sherman recently, and he is very, how can I put this? He's not fond of enslaved people. Full stop.
That's putting it nicely.
That's what I mean. I'm trying to
very nice of you, Darren.
I didn't realize, until today, until I was doing some research on something, and it's really opened my brain up about it.
I didn't know. I don't know enough about Sherman.
Really,
but I can only
sort
imagine.
of anti everything.
Yeah, he definitely had his choice of words. If I would just say, for anyone interested in learning more about Sherman's views on enslaved people or African Americans, read his memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
He says very clearly how he feels, how he thinks. He doesn't really hold back on that.
And I didn't mean to bring that up, but it was on my mind. I had to.
No, look. This is. I mean, this all connects one way or the other.
It all connects into the next story. That's the thing.
Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
I'd love to know, and this is the thing now for me. It's got me interested in thinking. Well, okay, so then you have this. Obviously the war ends in. Is it 1781? Is that right? It's around there, yeah.
The big surrender happened.
The big surrender, but anyway, and then you get the War of 1812, and how integral that is and intertwined with what's.
Speaking of,
so it's made me interested in that as well now.
I got a bone to pick with you. Speaking of, how come they're still finding unexploded British ordnance at Fort McHenry? They just had to close the park the other day because they found a British cannonball that was unexploded.
Oh, good. But no, I'm joking. But it is fascinating, But yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's just a few points. First, there is a really good book out there. And it's actually a dual biography on both Washington and Jefferson. and it actually examines how they view slavery over the course of their life. And it's very interesting because George Washington actually starts out as kind of like this harsh taskmaster. He's born into slavery. His initial dealings with it are really bad. But as he gets older, he really starts to change his thinking. He's getting outside of this gentry class that he was supposed to be. And he sees, okay, well, yeah, this is bad. This is wrong. And he starts dedicating his life to really trying to figure out how to get rid of it without upsetting the entire country as a whole. And this is something he's thinking about well into 1799. He's actually going to be, I think, the only founding father to actually free all the enslaved people that are actually under him. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's the case. But and you have Jefferson that's kind of the opposite of that. He
actually, Jefferson's not nice.
He starts out as like super anti-slavery. I mean, he's very vocal about it. He speaks about it, but then as he gets older, he kind of begins to rely more on it for economic purposes. He actually starts getting involved in the buying and selling of enslaved people, and then there's everything else that comes with that. So you understand, if you understand, but the reality is when it comes to these two guys, it's weird how their paths kind of like they cross in different directions. And I think it's one of those things, again, where we can look at George Washington and just simply say, like, you talk about someone that is probably the best at changing who he is for the better. I think he's probably the best, whether it's over the institution of slavery, whether it's him being a general or anything of the sort. I mean, the guy just is really, really good at adapting.
But maybe it's that experience, isn't it, from the war that's made him change.
Have you heard of the unavoidable subject of regret?
I haven't.
That is a book strictly focusing on Washington and slavery at Mount Vernon.
Okay.
So I always hate the like, oh, he was a good master to his slaves, or he was a good enslaver.
Oh yeah,
I always hate hearing that. But there was one thing that stuck out to me, and it allowed me to understand Washington's just treatment of slaves. And again, this one was a phenomenal book. I have been able to cover this one, and I think about it a lot when I go to Mount Vernon. I think it's actually not only just a good history on the enslaved community, but the history of him as a planter in the planter class. Like, it really delves into that aspect of Washington's life.
Okay.
But he inoculates all of his slaves. A lot of people don't know that, and he looks after individual health, which is something that, again, isn't. Of course, it's for his own benefit. I mean, again, this isn't like, oh, he cares this much. It's he doesn't. But he cares about having his grain to the grist mill on time, and he cares about continuing as a planter in the planter class. And I promise you, this is not a crap on George Washington fester here, because I don't adore anyone from history and think that they are the king or they're the best, but I do hold Washington in a very high regard, because, again, I think he is the one person who had all the quirks, qualities, and I guess maybe the persona of what the American needed to get through the revolution successfully and lead it afterwards. Like, he held those qualities and traits.
Yeah,
I just think Washington was the man for that.
I think he's still, like, and this is just my own opinion, I think the guy still belongs in, like, if there's a metaphorical pantheon of great Americans,
absolutely,
he's at the top.
Yeah.
He's at the
top.
top.
I have a bust of Washington coming to the door tomorrow morning.
He's up there with Mr. Lincoln.
Yeah. So so this is nothing. This is just us being truthful. I mean, this is just it is what it is.
Now, when you peel back the history, he's not a unblemished figure.
No.
He's got a very, very serious struggle. Not only, you just read the man's life himself. One of the biggest struggles in his life is his darn mother. That's a fun thing. Oh my God. You want to talk about a micromanaging?
In Fredericksburg.
Yes, she did. Yeah. And man, imagine, Mommy, can I go outside and play? No, George, you need to do your chores, even though all your chores are done. And she'll find creative chores for you just because she doesn't want you to go scab your knee up in the street. Imagine when you try to run away to go to the Navy, like what kind of wrath you have to face from this woman. His brother gets the wrath of that. Lawrence Washington really gets to deal with old
Poor kid.
Mary Washington there. But she's a scary woman. And, I say this jokingly, but I also mean that because that's a huge reason George ends up the way he does, is because he's got this mother who is
Strong
absolute control, strong to the point of almost like traumatizing him. Like
He had a lot of that.
Yeah, he did. Especially when you get out to start dealing with the French, it gets pretty traumatizing.
You start basically just about World War One.
He does, and he fails like almost entirely in his early military career, Darren. That he does not do well at all.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they make the point that he gets, these hatred towards the British come when they don't promote him because they think, oh, he's this colonist. What does he know? But he served in the British forces, for goodness sake, and went and gave could have lost his life and whatever. But
Edward Braddock did instead.
He should have been recognised for that, and maybe we would have been in a situation where Washington was leading the British.
Yeah,
that's a good question because I don't think he would have.
No, I don't think he would as well. It'd have been like
even if he had been promoted the minute there was a threat of Mount Vernon, because that was his entire life. I hate to say, yes, he's our president, but honestly, I think he held Mount Vernon in probably a higher regard than the country he led.
He was very successful at what he did, and that's why he was so freaking rich. I mean, that's why they wanted him in the first place. Let's be honest.
Well, they wanted him because he didn't ask for the job.
There you go.
That's the big takeaway I've got too. He didn't ask for it.
Another great, I'm going to change tact a teeny bit. Another great thing that happened on the last episode is they talk about the insurrections that start taking place within the army itself towards the latter end of the war. And because obviously they can't afford to pay these guys, and this really causes Washington and his commanders a lot of problems. There's even instances of apparently they're on there. There's a gang get together and they march on Philadelphia. They get met halfway and they get basically given what they want. And so another group go, oh, look, they got what they wanted. But then George Washington and the commanders have to get hard on these people and they have to make examples of some of these people. But they could have had a problem there. It's again, there's a lot of infighting within inside the Patriots, rebels, whatever you want to call them, the Continental Army,
Well, and they're not, that's going to be a continuous problem even after the revolution.
Whiskey Rebellion, big one.
Yep. And so that's not going to go away. The money issue is really bad.
Yeah. Thanks for serving. You get nothing now.
The reality is I have no idea why the French ever thought we would ever be able to pay them back. At least immediately. We helped him later. But
I think this is a Godfather move. It's like, one day I'm going to call upon you for a favor, but that day
I think that's probably what it was.
Yeah, it was one of those. It was.
At the end of the day, realistically, power. Yeah, they don't do it.
Because think about it. Do you think the French really considered this ragtag cabbage farmer from New York and multiply that by the thousands of servants are really going to be able to form a country to pay them back in an expeditious time? Probably not. I think it. Metaphorically, it's one of those Godfathers. Like, I'm going to do this for you, but one day.
I'll tell you what it does do, though, and it's really made me think about it. And again, it's watching this last episode halfway through. They make a very valid point that at this point, the French, because, they're going to have their own revolution later on down the line.
Oh, yeah, they are.
And it makes them look at themselves and go, well, hang on a minute. If this guy that's a farmer can become this guy that becomes president of a country, why should we be told what to do by somebody that sits on a throne with a crown on their head?
And especially when you have leaders.
That's what starts it off. So you Americans start off the French Revolution too. So
now Marquis de Lafayette 100% does that. The ink is still drying on his birth certificate when he comes over to the United States. Like, this guy's a kid, but that's who you have, so dedicated to that cause, and it's not even your own countries. You're darn right. They're starting a revolution. Like, that's who you're sending over.
The ramifications it has on the world and that empire type world at that time is huge.
Yeah,
it's It's quite
I
interesting.
think it's probably. I still think Great Britain kind of saved themselves a great deal of grief to an extent, given the fact that they were one of the few countries of Europe that doesn't experience these violent revolutions. Because if they don't experience it after or during the French Revolution, they're going to experience it in 1848.
Mhm.
Great Britain, the fact that you already have established a parliamentary monarchy, I think that already helps.
Well, again, we've already had our revolution. That was the English Civil Wars. That was, you think afterwards, Cromwell was in power for 10 years, and the British people or the English people at the time went, this is not for us, because it was awful. But apparently even banned Christmas. But that didn't go.
That what you banned Christmas? Yeah, off with your
Yeah,
Yeah,
it did
hey,
ban Christmas.
It's
Not the
not
Christmas we know,
religious
because
enough.
obviously
Yeah.
the Christmas we know is Victorian. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. Is there any battle so far in the documentary you wish they actually would have spent more time on?
Not for me, because I don't know enough about them.
That's the same kind of answer I have, but I know a little bit. That's why there's a trilogy sitting next to me for a reason, sir. All right, I'm sorry. You can't just give me 2 minutes of these British guys hunkered in a freaking house and these Americans just throwing themselves at the door and getting butchered and tell me that that's it. I'm like, no, there's something there, man. And so Germantown is in this stack too, because I'm like,
There's
go
a-
British, like, for being smart. Like, oh, these walls are 2 feet thick. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Look
I
at
think
that.
what they have done, though,
Yeah.
is the battles they have highlighted. They've done very well with the way they put them together with maps and a little bit of,
The
a
maps
little
are
mixture of the reenactment side of things.
Yes.
I've quite enjoyed the aesthetics of it, and with it being in, the modern era and it being in 4K, it just stands out. It just looks so freaking good.
Yeah,
It does look good.
yeah.
So I'll give them a big thumbs up for the maps and the way, especially the Battle of Bunker Hill, the way they put that together and showed and explained how that went out. But about
I get that.
Bunkers Hill, sorry, not Bunker Hill.
Breed Hill. Breed Hill
In
was really
Breed
cool.
Hill,
They focused on Breed Hill more than they did Bunker Hill, and I thought that was really, really cool because that was the most vulnerable portion of that line there.
And so violent, so horrendously
Mhm.
violent, because they
Again,
make
they-
a point as well about the musket balls, don't they? About the muskets. Again, we know this. You have to get very close. So bayonets come into play, and they're just stabbing the hell out of each other.
Well, and
Snake,
I thought they did really well explaining that about.
Okay.
Yeah, Brandywine. Yeah, that's a good one.
And
Both of those
there's
are
a new-
great.
There's a third.
Yep.
So did you go out and buy them just after the documentary, Tyler? Or-
Actually, these 4, the Washington and all these have been on my shelf. The Philadelphia one, yes.
So when you go to Mount Vernon, though, that's where you spend loads of your money.
Yeah, don't tell the world that. These 2 are new. This I don't know if I'm actually supposed to have yet. I found it at Barnes and Noble, and it's got a copyright of 2026 inside of it. It doesn't have a copyright of 25, which I've never seen that. I'm like, interesting. Okay, but it's called "Declaring Independence: Why 1776 Matters" by Edward Larson.
Okay.
Maybe it's not
And-
supposed to be out yet. Maybe that's.
I don't know. Yeah, it was like it said copyright 2026. I'm like, I'm not asking any questions. I'm just
You're just gonna buy
Well, they
it.
know
yeah.
now. They're going to come around your house and beat you up and take it back, and you can have it next year when it's supposed to come out.
they'll knock on the door on January 1st. Here you go.
Yeah.
And then the Lord Dunmore book, A Perfect Frenzy, which is
Yeah.
doing about Virginia. Of course, that I'm biased. I'm like, I have to have that. They're actually at the bottom of my list. This is my to be read pile for the rest of the year. Is to
Yeah.
get through Washington, and then I want to the Philadelphia campaign because if I'm going to study the American Revolutionary War, I want to start at one of our defeats. As weird as that sounds, and I was like, that also the Germantown episode got me. I'm like, damn, okay, that house sounds. That's really brutal fighting, and the fact that they were about to go around it, and you have Knox just like, no, let's stay, and we can't have an enemy behind us. Like he's behind 2-foot wall. Like, I think he's going to be okay sitting there for a minute while you guys continue. Maybe not. That's just I want to understand more about the like. Is Knox? Is he okay? Like, is this a good decision Knox makes, or is this one of those like you just potentially destroyed the Continental Army by staying here and just wasting ammunition and men and tremendous amounts of men?
Yeah.
Because by the time that they stop arguing about staying, Cornwallis is showing up, I believe. I think that's who it is. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not a good person to see just flying down the road, unless it's
No,
back on a ship to, no offense, Darren.
I
None taken.
hopefully the 250 some years has
Yeah.
helped mend that bend a little bit.
So,
But the one battle that I actually was like, I wish you would have talked about that more, was Quebec, actually.
I'm sure Tim would say the same thing. Yeah. I asked him about that yet, but I'm sure that's going to be
I'll have to ask him.
Yeah, Quebec would be his.
But I was like, oh, Quebec. It's like, well, again, it kind of goes back to that point Darren made earlier. It's like there's this story, and then it stops, and you're like, what? Okay.
That's what it did, yeah.
And so okay, yeah, I that was the one that like I thought. Now that's up to this point. Again, maybe later there's going to be a battle that I'm going to be like, oh, they should have talked more there. As far as British commanders are concerned, who actually impresses you the most military wise?
I don't know. I'd have to watch it again probably to come up with that answer because again, I don't really know much about them. So I can't.
I think
really
Howe does a pretty good job.
Yeah,
That was gonna
that's
be my
pretty
go-to.
impressive. He's pretty relentless, isn't he?
Yeah, that guy doesn't give
his
up.
goals and his.
I can't
his,
stand Burgoyne, but who can?
No, but I don't think he lasts long after that Montreal job.
No,
anyway,
no.
the Saratoga. I can't say that word.
Saratoga.
Saratoga. That's what.
There you go.
Yeah, by the way, how strange is it that it's Saratoga? It's like, it's considered this turning point of the war. But you don't have Washington's army there. You have Horatio Gates in Saratoga. I don't know why that bothers me. It bothers me though. I'm like, wow, why does he have to
Not
be
a
there?
Gates fan. No.
Nope. But then again, maybe I just associate him so much with the Battle of Camden. It's hard for me to.
Camden's not a good day.
But and maybe that leads into a different question. I mean, is there a battle that you consider to be very overrated in the American Revolution, or one that maybe gets probably too much attention versus others? Because
Actually,
I feel like,
good
at least with the Civil War, what is the one battle? I know you guys know this. What's the one battle everyone talks about, and they write a book on it every month of the year,
Every week.
every week?
Yeah, it's got its own magazine.
I don't know whether there is a battle like that within the Rev War. I don't know. Is there, Tyler? You could probably answer that.
I'm thinking. Part of me wants to say Yorktown, but part of me doesn't, because Yorktown has its own importance. But at the same time, I mean, it's really only the action of storming two parapets or two redoubts, excuse me. Otherwise, it's a siege line.
Yeah.
And so, and they look at this as like one glorious battle. I'm like, it's a charge into a redoubt twice. Like, I'm not saying that's not like it. Okay, it sounds so bad. Like I feel like just I'm committing treason saying this almost. Like, but it's, to me, maybe that's one of them. That, and this is all spawning as I'm saying it too. I'm like, holy crap, maybe this is one that's like, okay, it is important, it's awesome, but isn't it just digging and staring at each other for quite a while before Hamilton and Lafayette decide that.
I mean, if you
we're going for
include
those.
all the operations that take place beforehand, like, I kind of get it, because you have Marquis de Lafayette trying to distract Cornwallis. You have isn't there a battle like on the water between the French?
See, that was going to be my second argument. It is a action that is supporting Washington arriving in Yorktown, but I think that in itself should be the big one that we focus on more, the Battle of the Capes, on the Chesapeake. Okay, that was that's where the war was won right there, when the French made the British say, you know what, guys in Yorktown, sorry,
Actually, I'm glad you brought that
the
the
heck out
naval
of
side
here.
up, because there's a lot in the documentary at one point, or not a lot, but there's a part about the sort of commerce raiders type going around sacking and destroying
Yep.
British ships, and that is very that
My
helps a lot of the
Revolutionary War
American cause.
ancestor did that for a living.
That's quite interesting part of it, and I think that needs a deeper dive. But
That was the first book I read, but way before this came out. When I got into the American Rev War, it was the Age of Sail during the American Revolution, and it was really focused on the American side. It was funny. It was written by a Brit, but it was focused on the British shipbuilding and the ship actions that took place in the United States. Purely American. So there was obviously like the British counterparts, but this is all on like the buildup of the modern Navy. There was an interesting, my ancestor, Thomas McWilliams, he's like a second to third great grandfather on my mother's side. His day job was to get on to sloops. One of them was a captured British sloop that he would go and drag British soldiers into court and try them by taking their ships, taking everything they own, and then bring them to court and arrest them, like legitimately put them through like court proceedings, which is just fantastic, dude. I'm like, but you're right. That's the kind of Navy.
You think that really hurts Britain, because a lot of those ships down in the Caribbean get affected by that, and that trade going to and from London to
exactly because you have skilled
really hurts,
arrested.
because that's where the money's coming from at that time. Because obviously the trade with the US has stopped at that point.
Yeah,
so
we didn't have GPSs,
so
right? So you have a navigation crew on those ships. If you go out and arrest all of them and throw them into prison, and everyone's like, "Well, I can't get my boat out of here now." Like you're done for. So Darren, no, you're absolutely. I know. I'm sorry for laughing. It seems silly, but that's super strategic on the colonist part to just be like,
"Yeah,
I'm gonna go arrest this British crew over here." That's just.
And so Britain focused their tactic on using the Navy to destroy a lot of important ports and places where you guys can, take in stuff and which will help your war aim.
Well, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. That was.
No, you did a pretty good job at that too, I'd say.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I would say one of the
Britain does
probably the greatest disadvantage that the British had at the time, was it's not like you could send all your warships directly to the colonies, because you have to still deal with what's going on near Gibraltar. You still have to deal with what's going on in India, and India is like
India's on fire.
Yeah, that's what made me laugh about the show. They piped up about the Spanish, and I just went, go away. You had your chance in the 1500s. Go away. You failed. But also, there's that worry, isn't there? They make that point as well, because Spain has got a lot of empire out in America, in the Americas, and what they're seeing in America is worrying them, because they think, well, is that going to catch fire? Are we going to have the same issues down in Mexico and down in South America? So it does worry them. But when they mentioned that, I just laughed. I just thought, what are they going to do? They couldn't do anything the first time.
You just keep thinking of the Spanish Armada trying to
useless. Burn them up, burn their ships, destroy them all.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably the one little glimmer of hope that you have through this whole thing, is you get to see the British still wreck the Spanish.
Yeah,
they got Gibraltar, that's the main thing, But Britain were not stupid. They wanted to control that little sliver of water, and they did it. They're still arguing over that now, that. They're still arguing.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's kind of interesting to see, like, it just to see like how the colonists were able to intercept all these different British ships, and of course you have guys like John Paul Jones kind of come out from the woodwork. But there's one story in particular that, we've touched on him, but I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts, because I want to know your opinions about him. But Benedict Arnold, and I especially want to hear Darren's perspective on Benedict Arnold, because I'm curious to know like what you think, and because I feel like the documentary itself is actually portraying almost kind of like this tragic character somewhat.
Thank God I haven't watched that part yet.
I think that they portray him in a really good light when it comes to the first few episodes, as in like, this guy that's really good tactically during a battle. And then obviously, like I said, I've seen that little bit where he switches sides and
Hmm.
yeah. So, but again, it's someone I'm not super knowledgeable on, but I want to go and find out about now. But yeah, he obviously, I mean, love is a powerful thing, isn't it? And so he fell in love with a woman and he decided to change sides. But yeah.
Have either of you watched the Turn series that they had on AMC?
No, I haven't.
Any good?
It's corny. There's a lot of episodes.
It's TV.
Of him and the love of his life, and she's apparently. Is it true that she was John Andre's girlfriend too at one point?
I have no idea. I'm
She
not
probably
gonna
banged the whole
pretend I know.
regiment, didn't she?
It probably, yeah. Well, so in the show, apparently she is attached to John Andre, and then she runs around to Benedict Arnold, and
Sounds a lot like Josephine before she met Napoleon.
it's Jenny Wade at Gettysburg. Yeah, everyone's got one in the war, but there are fascinating aspects.
Anyway, I've got a question to ask Tyler.
Uh-oh.
So he told me the other day that he's technically British now, so he's going to have to switch sides.
So maybe talk about that.
Why would you say that?
Because for my entire life, I had thought that my Duffy family that came over here, I got this really cool stuff, man. So it says it's on the Rever. I'll tell that story. I'll lead up to it. But I have a great grandfather who was the Freemason who made the silver trowel and the gavel that Washington used to lay the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol, which is my first bloodline here in the U.S. from my dad's side, on my dad's mother's father's side, or mother's side, excuse me. So fifth great grandpa, right? With the last name Duffey, you would think he's from Ireland or maybe Scotland, maybe. No, you want to know where he's from?
Where?
First off, he left Wales. Don't laugh, there. It's like, oh, great. Then he went to a place called Cornwall, England.
Yeah, down in the West Country.
Is that a good place to be?
Yeah, it's a beautiful
He
place.
didn't think so because he came from there to Alexandria.
Well, it wasn't back then probably, but there was a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of tin mines down there and that stuff like
That's what he was doing.
tin mining. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you
that's
think of the Battle of
exactly
Great Torrington,
okay.
that's down in Devon, and Devon borders Cornwall, and it's right down in the West Country. Go and look at Google Maps and you'll see it.
Well,
It's a
most-
beautiful
apparently
place.
My Duffy family comes from there.
But not back then.
Mm-mm.
And in actual fact, Cornwall's always thought of itself as its own country. It's got a lot of history.
Interesting. Yeah, we
It's
know
got
he
its own
comes from
flag and
Cornwall,
everything.
though. He leaves Cornwall in 1790 for the U.S., and when he gets here, he joins the Masonic Lodge in Fredericksburg, which is how he starts meeting all these interesting individuals, and ultimately,
So technically, you're Cornish.
You're
Cornish. Corny,
That's what
yeah.
they call us,
Corny. I'm
Cornish.
glad I dropped that word earlier. I'm not a
Cornish.
Cornish.
And they're most famous for a thing called a Cornish pasty, and there's an argument between Devon and Cornwall. So you have a scone, which you would call a biscuit, and you have jam and fresh cream on it. And one county has it one way and the other has it the other. So one has the jam at the bottom and the cream on the top, the other, and they argue about it.
That's
So
the
if you
funny
go,
thing.
if you go to Devon, it'll be that way. If you go to Cornwall, it'll be that way.
Oh,
So
dude,
yeah, that's all your fault, Tyler.
Yeah, apparently that's where we come from.
And Cornwall is where they think that the Arthur story actually originates from.
Oh,
So they
sweet.
have
That's
that,
cool. Okay. Hell
They
yeah.
have that castle.
Sword out of a
It's
stone.
called. Oh, I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, yeah,
Sir Arthur's Castle. I don't know. It's something.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can't remember. So you might be part of that, King Arthur.
Probably not. He came from Wales before that. So,
There you go.
yeah. But long story short, he got to do all that. And Terry Rensel, you remember him? He's from CBBT, director there. Our ancestors
Yeah.
knew each other because they were members of the same lodge. And the gavel that my ancestor made for Washington's cornerstone ceremony, they gave it to his great grandfather or it was uncle or something, but Valentine Rensel. So our Terry and I's ancestors were palling it around Masonic lodges in the 1790s.
Okay.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why you gravitated towards.
Yeah, it's we found that.
There
we
you
were
There
like,
you go.
oh
Yeah,
my
there's
God,
already a
man.
gravitational pull.
Yeah, I was like, that makes sense. I'm like, wow, we were nerdy then and nerdy now. But we got to
That's
go and
fantastic.
like tour the local Masonic Lodge in Fredericksburg and held on to a pretty revolutionary item. There was the Bible that Washington used to swear into the Freemasons, as well as some other notable people like Fielding Lewis, Hugh Mercer, George Whedon, who was also in the Continental Army. It was a really cool thing to see. So,
Yeah.
especially right the day before the American Revolution airs, it's just like to be around something that important, because the Masonic Lodge played a lot in Washington's life too. And you mentioned something at the very beginning of like Washington go from a good man to making him better. That's something that a lot of them believe in, and I'm not a Mason, so I don't know. But I think one of the core beliefs is like to take good people, make them better people, right? Or to take a good man, make them better. So Washington probably was using the influence from that, I think, a lot in his personal life, and you see that in his character. So to see his mental change and that shift,
Yeah.
probably has a huge tie into it.
Well, and I think that's maybe one of the, at least what I'm seeing so far is when it comes to this documentary, it's just like I think probably the really good part about this is that it's portraying how complicated everyone is,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no perfection, there's nothing like that. It's not this beautiful story or whatever. Like it's not pretty. I mean, it does paint an ugly picture, but that's most of history.
Absolutely.
But the important thing though is picking out those great parts in each one of those. And I think George Washington is actually going to be that great part that actually comes out of the revolution. And I think that I'm actually glad we focused so much on him, just talking about him. I think it's been great. But just I know I think we're after an hour here at this point, but is there anything else you guys have left to say before we wrap things up?
No, I think we should all three revisit this soon. Let us finish that. Let me finish these next two episodes and read more about Washington, because I want to also get further down into the Brandywine stuff, because I see you have the Germantown book, so that would be a fun discussion to go into some of the stuff there. Darren, we can pass you notes so you can read up on the two battles if you want to ever talk to us about it.
If that's the case, we need to get Michael Harris on with us.
Agreed.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
I will just say it's been absolutely hours flown by. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
And just going back to the documentary, anyone listening to this and watching this, please make sure you go and watch it, because it is worth it. Sometimes you see stuff and it gets you into history, and if it is your first time, just go and watch it, because it's fantastic. And what it's going to do, again, hopefully it'll have that same impact that Civil War had.
Right.
And further down the line, it'll keep drawing people to the subject, because I think the Rev War's under studied. I think it's quite popular, but I don't think it's as studied as the Civil War, and that is what really is the beginnings, and what's going to come afterwards is from the ashes of this.
Yeah, what better time to start than the 250th anniversary? Right?
Exactly.
Seriously. Yeah.
Exactly.
That wasn't a dig. That's an honest thing. Like, this is a great time to do it. It's going to be front and center for a lot of things. We're seeing it.
Really enjoyed this conversation. It's been really good. So thank you very much, Nate, for thinking of me to
sincerely. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you guys for coming on. Really, I really appreciate it. And thanks for all of you that are watching. But otherwise, I'm the Dramatic Historian. We'll see you next time.